A guy goes to a bar at the top of a skyscraper restaurant. He takes a shot, goes to the balcony, and jumps out. I die sitting next to him, can't believe what he just saw, and he gets more shot when 10 minutes later the guy walks back into the bar. The shot guy says, "How did you do that? I just saw you jump out and we're hundreds of feet above ground." The drunk guy says, "I don't get it either. I take a shot and I jump out the balcony, and right before I hit the ground, the alcohol slows me down. See, watch." He goes to the balcony and jumps off again. The other guy runs to the balcony and watches as the drunk guy falls right above the sidewalk, slows down, and lands on his feet. 10 minutes later, the drunk guy walks back into the bar. The other guy said he had to try this, so he drinks a shot, goes to the balcony, and jumps out, and as he reaches the sidewalk, he does it slow down, and splat. The drug guy orders a shot, and the bartender looks at him, shakes his head, and says, "You can be a real asshole when you're drunk, Superman." So a farmer stopped by the local mechanic shop to have his truck fixed. They couldn't do it while he waited, so he said he didn't live far and would walk home. On the way home, he stopped at the hardware store and bought a bucket and a gallon of paint. He then stopped by the feed store and picked up a couple of chickens and a goose. However, struggling outside the store, he had a problem carrying his entire purchases home. While scratching his head, he was approached by a little old lady who told him she was lost. She asked, "Can you tell me how to get to 16-3 Mockingbird Lane?" The farmer said, "Well, my farm is very close to that house. I would walk you there, but I can't carry this lot." The old lady suggested, "Why don't you put the can of paint in the bucket, carry the bucket in one hand, put a chicken under each arm, and carry the goose in your other hand?" "Thank you very much," he said, walking the old girl home. On the way, he says, "Let's take my shortcut and go down this alley. We'll be there in no time." The little old lady looked him over cautiously and then said, "I am a lonely widow without a husband to defend me. How do I know that when we get in the alley you won't hold me up against the wall, pull up my skirt, and have your way with me?" The farmer said, "Holy smokes, lady, I'm carrying a bucket, a gallon of paint, 2 chickens, and a goose. How in the world could I possibly hold you up against the wall and do that?" The old lady replied, "Set the goose down, cover him with the bucket, put the paint on top of the bucket, and I'll hold the chickens." So as I cruised down the highway, perhaps just a little over the speed limit, okay, maybe more than a little, I passed beneath a looming bridge. And wouldn't you know it, there stood a policeman on the other side, armed with a radar gun, ready to pounce on unsuspecting speedsters like myself. The policeman flagged me down, strolled to my car, and with that signature smug grin plastered across his face, he quipped, "Late for takeoff, are we?" Without missing a beat, I retorted, "Running behind for work." Curious, he inquired, "So what's your line of work then?" "Oh, I'm in the business of rectum stretching," I deadpanned. The policeman's expression morphed into a mix of surprise and bewilderment. "Oh, what now? Rectum stretching? And what exactly does that entail?" "Well," I explained, matter of fact, "it starts with 1 finger, then progresses to 2, then 3, until I've got both hands in there, gently widening the passage until it's about 6 feet wide." Baffled, the policeman cautiously asked, "And what on earth do you do with a 6-foot asshole?" With a polite grin, I replied, "Simple. You equip him with a radar gun and station him behind a bridge." So a girl asks her boyfriend to come over Friday night to meet and have dinner with her parents. Since this is such a big event, the girl announces to her boyfriend that after dinner, she would like to go out and make love for the first time. The boy is ecstatic, but he has never made love before, so he takes a trip to the pharmacist to get some condoms. He tells the pharmacist it's his first time, and the pharmacist helps the boy for about an hour. He tells the boy everything there is to know about condoms and making love. At the register, the pharmacist asks the boy, "Which pack would you like to buy? A 3-pack, 10-pack, or family pack?" The boy insists on the family pack because he thinks he will be rather busy at being his first time and all. That night, the boy shows up at the girl's parents' house and meets his girlfriend at the door. "Oh, I'm so excited for you to meet my parents. Come on in." The boyfriend goes inside and is taken to the dinner table where the girl's parents are seated. The boy quickly offers to say, "Grace," and bows his head. A minute passes, and the boy is still deep in prayer with his head down. 10 minutes pass and still no movement from the boy. Finally, after 20 minutes with his head down, the girlfriend leans over and whispers to the boyfriend, "I had no idea you were this religious." The boy turns and whispers back, "I had no idea your father was a pharmacist." So a man arrives in hell and is met by the devil. He is told that he can choose from 3 different types of torture that run in 1,000-year cycles. In the first room, there's a man hanging upside down being whipped. "Well, what do you say?" asks the devil. "No, thank you," says the man. The two then proceed to the second room where another man is being beaten with a stick. Again, the man turns to the devil and says, "Nah, we'll skip this one too." In the third room, there's a man strapped to a wall getting a blowjob from a beautiful blonde. The man immediately shouts with excitement, "I'll start here." "Well, are you sure?" asks the devil. "Remember, this lasts for eternity." After the man assures the devil this is his chosen torture, Satan turns to the blonde and says, "You can go now. I found your replacement." So after 20 years of marriage, a couple was lying in bed one evening when the wife felt her husband begin to touch her in ways he hadn't in quite some time. It almost tickled as his fingers started at her neck and then began moving down past the small of her back. He then slid his hand across her shoulders and neck and slowly worked it down one side, then the other hand, stopping just over her lower stomach. He then proceeded to place his hand on her left inner arm, caressed downward again, working down her side, passed gently over and then in between between her buttock and down her leg to her calf. Then he proceeded up her inner thigh, stopping just at the uppermost portion of her leg. He continued in the same manner on her right side, then suddenly stopped, rolled over, and became silent. As she had become quite aroused by this caressing, she asked in a loving voice, "Oh, honey, that was wonderful! Why did you stop?" "Oh, honey, I already found the remote," the husband replied. A woman awakes during the night to find out that her husband is not in bed. So she puts on her robe and goes downstairs to look for him. She finds him sitting at the kitchen table with a hot cup of coffee in front of him. He appears to be in deep thought, just staring at the wall. She watches as he wipes a tear from his eye and sips his coffee. "What's the matter, honey?" she whispers as she steps into the kitchen. "Why are you down here at this time of night?" The husband looks up from his coffee and says, "Honey, it's our 20th anniversary of the day we met." She can't believe that he has remembered and starts to tear up. The husband continues, "Do you remember 20 years ago when we started dating? I was 18 and you were only 16? He says solemnly. Once again, the wife is touched to tears. "Yes, I do," she replies. The husband pauses. "Do you remember when your father caught us in the back seat of my car?" "Yes, I remember," said the wife, lowering herself into the chair beside him. The husband continued, "Do you remember when he shoved the shotgun in my face and said, 'Either you marry my daughter or I will send you to prison for 20 years?' "I remember that too," she replied softly. He wiped another tear from his cheek and said, "Well, honey, I would have gotten out today." So a ship belonging to a seafood company from Italy accidentally drops tons upon tons of live lobsters overboard off the coast of Maine. Upon hearing this news, a lobster catcher from Maine, down on his luck, jumps on his boat to catch as many lobsters as he can and sell them before the Italian company. As he doesn't know quite where the lobsters had fallen into the water, he casts his net out and tries to capture as many lobsters as he can. He only manages to catch about a dozen lobsters. Frustrated and out of patience, the lobster catcher cuts his losses and sails back to shore when suddenly he hears from his lobster cage a voice that says, "Oh sir, please don't kill us. My pals and I have done nothing to you." Shocked and confused, the lobster catcher simply states he has been trying to catch lobsters for hours. "I was told that there were thousands of them, but you're all I got." "Sir," cries the talking lobster, "I know exactly where those lobsters are, and I'll take you to them and trick them into getting into your net. Just let me and my pals go." After agreeing and following the lobster's directions to the sea, he ties the lobster to a string, then throws the lobster in the water and waits. About 20 minutes later, the talking lobster comes back to the boat and tells the catcher, "They're not getting in the net. They won't listen and just yelled at me." "Well, what did they say?" asks the lobster catcher. "How should I know? I don't speak Italian." So, four nuns are arguing about what they think a man's pecker feels like. Unbeknownst to them, the vicar was passing by. Hearing snippets of their conversation, he stopped in his tracks, his face reddening with shock and disapproval. "You are nuns! You are not supposed to think about that!" he scolded, making them jump. But then an idea struck him. Perhaps if they satisfied their curiosity, they would cease these improper thoughts. "I will let you each have a feel so you can stop wondering." The nuns were stunned into silence, but their curiosity was undeniable. After a moment, they nodded in agreement. The vicar arranged for them to discreetly satisfy their curiosity, hoping this would put an end to their improper discussions. Later that day, they reconvened in the garden, eager to share their experiences. The first nun smiled and said, "Oh, it's like a kneeling cushion, so soft and warm." The second nun shook her head. "No, my sister, it is more like the hymnal, firm, but one can still bend it." The third nun couldn't help but interject, "No, no, my sister, it's like the bishop's crook, long and hard like wood." The fourth nun, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "No, my sisters, it's like a camel." Her three companions stared at her in bewilderment. "A camel?" they chorused in astonishment. "Yes, a camel, and it spit on me."